could we get, is anybody in the room that's supposed, where's Ernest? Is he here now? Okay, I'm not sure if he wants to do his presentation now or he wants to do it later, because he's moderating later. Maybe he just wants to do everything all together at the same time. So Dr. Jaja, if you could come up, please, and let's get the second panel started. Thank you. So let me just recap. We talked about space for Earth in a broader sense. Now we're talking about the future of satellites. And I wanted to talk about the future because there's so much new technology. Yesterday, we talked about space debris and those questions. And so we talked about space debris and those questions. And so we need to start having, when we think about CubeSat launching, we need to start having people focus on what kind of a CubeSat launches are we going to be doing from Africa? How are we going to begin to answer the questions about space debris removal? What kind of things we want to do differently in terms of powering those satellites, the kind of research, the payloads. So this session is talking about the future of satellites, and I invited Dr. Jaja to replace me here at the podium and introduce our panelists. Dr. Jaja, the floor is yours.
Thank you, my sister. What is the thank you word in Twi again? Medasi, right? Medasi, Sister Claire. So this session is going to be on our futures with satellites. And we have online Mujahid Indabawa from Nigeria SAT. We have Hamza Hadid, chair of SGAC 2022-2024. And we have Eric Engweson from Flexus. So can we have these participants in this order? So we start with Mujahid Indabawa from Nigeria SAT, speaking with us on our futures with satellites.
Good morning.
Oh,
can you hear? Am I audible?
Yes, we're hearing you.
Yeah, good morning. It's nice to be here with you, and I'm also happy that I'm together with a friend of mine, Hamza Hamid. We actually did our LLM in space law together at the University of Leiden. Hamza, hello, it's been a while.
It's so good to see you again. It's really been too long.
See you. Morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Mujahid Kilo Indabawa. I work with the National Space Research and Development Agency in Nigeria. And we've been engaged in a lot of projects, legal services and space regulation. Just 2 days ago, we opened up a new department called Space Regulation and Spectrum Management, because the industry is becoming bigger. And as well as you know, Nigeria has been a spacefaring nation for the past 24 years. It comes with challenges, comes with advantages. And the problem is, as the theme has its futures with satellites, is the more technology advances, the more complicated the sector becomes. We spoke about space debris and mitigation. We also have the issue of launch of CubeSats, which we have been doing. Recently, we collaborated with a university. I think it's University of Ile-Ife, which launched the Cube satellite. The satellite was actually designed, developed, manufactured in Nigeria, but only launched out of Nigeria because we don't have launching capacity. But I would like to speak in the context of Nigeria and West Africa generally, from the angle of security, because it seems to be the norm of the day. And what do we do with satellite technology to mitigate or help in security issues? Because deployment of satellites and space technology would actually help. West Africa is very vast. Nigeria has been grappling with the issue of insurgency for the past 14 years. And satellite technology was used in the later stages of fighting insurgency to actually mitigate and bring a solution to the security problem. But then the question comes to why using satellite technology if it's a national issue? Well, the Boko Haram insurgency issue hasn't been a national issue, it's been an international issue because they cross borders between Nigeria, Niger, Cameroon, and Chad. You can't use drones to monitor security in those areas, and you can't use reconnaissance aircraft because we've had situations whereby they've shut down those aircrafts. So in the later stages, we use satellite technology, particularly because we belong to two constellations. One is the Africa Resource Management Constellation, and the second is the Disaster Management Constellation. This allows you to have access to other satellites in issues of disaster management. And I think security falls within that ambit. So the future of satellites
Maybe we could go to another speaker until Muhajid, come on. Mr. Hamid, are you hearing us?
Yes, I can hear you.
Hamid? Yeah, are you able to speak? We have lost our previous speaker. Are you able to speak?
Yeah, I'm able to speak, but I see Mujahid's back. Mujahid,
Until he comes back.
I think you're on
Oh,
mute.
he's back. He is back. Sorry about that.
Sorry about
Mujahid,
that.
you're muted.
Sorry
You're
about
muted,
that. Starlink just disconnected me. I'm actually connected to you via Starlink. Yeah, yeah.
Oh, Starlink can actually
Sorry?
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, so
Go ahead, please.
yeah, so
Pick up from where you left off.
yeah, so we're working with the Office of the National Security Advisor to see how we could access security fundings from his office to fund our satellite programs because looking at agriculture, education, telemedicine, but at the moment we need to tell ourselves the honest truth that one of the biggest problems we have is security. And as the security experts say, you don't fight many battles from different war fronts. It's better you approach a battle at a time. As we're working on research and development, trying to launch an astronaut, agricultural monitoring, cadastral mapping, GIS solutions, we also need to look at the peculiar challenges that we have, which is actually an African problem. Because we can stretch away from Niger and look into Burkina Faso, Mali, where you also have other security challenges. So that's one prong that I look at futures of satellites and living with them. We really need to also be advanced and look outside the conventional system. Again, this Starlink just disconnected me, and it came into Nigeria, and they are now the second largest internet service provider in the country. They are growing by the day. And that's why my agency on Monday created the space regulations and spectrum department, because Starlink was only regulated by the Nigerian Communications Commission. And we have a space regulation that has been sitting there idle. And we've said that, look, we have to activate it, first of all, to regulate the sector. Secondly, we need to tap into the revenue. In Nigerian Naira, people pay 38,000 Naira monthly for Starlink subscription. It's negligible because 38,000 Naira these days is basically almost $30, $40. But $40 in an industry that you have millions of subscribers, it's a lot of money, and Starlink is paying just value-added tax. They're not paying into the space and satellite fund. So there's also that advantage. We have to key into revenue, because if you want to fund the space industry again, and you have companies like SpaceX being one of the largest ISPs in the largest ICT market in Africa, we need to tap into them and fund also the space industry again. You know, as you regulate them, you also take money from them so that you can improve your own, because as much as we love them, we also have to have our own. We need to encourage private sector participation. I think if Hamza may recall, while I was doing my LLM in Leiden, I was looking into commercialization of the sector, full commercial participation. Currently, I'm working on my PhD thesis, which I'm due to finish by the end of the year. And my topic is the legal implication of Earth observation satellites to state sovereignty. It's another problem because you have all these satellites flying over your territory. But what are the legal implications to your sovereignty? You know, when did Google generate images of the world? Who gave consent when Google was doing that? Bing have done that. A lot of companies have open source data, which anyone could have access. If you go to Latin America, it's another challenge because the narco criminal cartels also use satellite data to operate. So my view on future of satellites is always looking into, now is about the security aspect of it, sovereignty aspect, security aspects, and funding. So I think the African nation needs to sit up and realize that, look, we're in the future today. The future is today, it wasn't yesterday. When did Elon Musk start? When did that company in the Netherlands, ISIS, start? You know, we can see even the Russian space agency launching every day, the Chinese launching every day. I know we can do it, but then the key to it is collaboration. We need to come together. We need to come, all these African nations need to sit down, come together, do the same research, give ourselves a target. We're going to launch so-so satellites for so-so applications. We're going to subsidize imageries for our farmers. We're going to help in disaster management and mitigation, particularly now it's the raining season in this part of Africa. So I think the future is today. We need to tell ourselves the honest truth. From the agency here, we're launching 4 more satellites, among which there's going to be a synthetic aperture radar, 2 more Earth observation satellites with 2 millimeter panchromatic lenses, and another communication satellite. And so that's what Nigeria is doing. And we're also going to look into more collaborations. We're talking with SANSA and the Egyptian Space Agency. So if any space agency is hearing me, we are open for business and collaboration from here. That's my contribution in the panel. I don't know if I can stop now.
Thank you so very much. We are very grateful for bringing us that information from Nigeria SAT. So I now call on Hamza Hadid, who is the chair of SGAC 2022 to 2024. Over to you.
Thank you very much for the kind invitation, and thank you to all the organizers for putting this event together. I'm very happy to speak on this panel. Before I start, a little about me, like it was very rightfully said, I served as the chair of the Space Generation Advisory Council, or SGAC, from April 2022 to March 2024. So my term finished about 4 months ago. I presently work as a senior practice manager for space and connectivity for a policy consulting firm called Access Partnership, where I lead their space practice in Asia, Africa, and the Pacific. And I also serve as an advisory board member to the ITU Secretary General's Youth Advisory Board. It is delightful to share this panel with my good old friend Mujahid. I still remember playing football together in Leiden, doing our masters together. So it's really nice to see him again, and really delighted to hear about the launch of the new space regulatory board that they've composed. It's incredibly interesting to hear about this as uh, my country. I'm from Pakistan, and Pakistan itself recently inaugurated a new Pakistan Space Activities and Regulatory Board, especially for the reason to look at how that market could license and monetize NGSO constellations, particularly those that provide connectivity and broadband, but also those that do remote sensing and Earth observation from MEO and other NGSO orbits. When Claire invited me to speak on this panel, and thank you very much, Claire, uh, she asked me to talk a bit about some of the current challenges and gaps, particularly in terms of education and workforce development, and how this is a very important part of the development of a space ecosystem. And I think this is an incredibly important point. I think just as of a few years ago, the space industry in Africa alone was valued about 20 billion US dollars and is expected to grow tremendously. This space industry forms part of a global space industry that many expect to reach around 1.8 trillion by 2035. There's a lot of major drivers of growth to this space industry, all of which are very important to the continent of Africa and countries like developing countries like Ghana, particularly. This includes a focus on supply chain and transportation, the impact on things such as deliveries for food and beverage, security and defense. What Mujahid mentioned is incredibly relevant as the space economy continues to grow. And with space technology, the United Nations has illustrated that almost each and every one of the sustainable development goals can be augmented and achieved faster if space applications are used properly. If you look at some additional statistics, uh, in 2022, African nations across the board allocated about 530 million to national space programs, which in itself was more than a 2.5% increase from the previous year. And this continues to be a very strong number, illustrating Africa's prioritization for space and a recognition of the importance of the space sector and the growth of the continent. At the same time, in order to sustain this growth, it's very important to not only develop a workforce that's knowledgeable in all areas of space, including policy, regulatory, and legal, but also, as was said in the previous panel, to give these people opportunities to exercise some of that talent and learning within their domestic the domestic industry and ecosystems. In this regard, I think there is a lot of value to in considering the current state of space law and policy education across Africa and even in Ghana, for example. Increasingly, universities around the world have started to develop more and more programs on aerospace law, on space law in particular, and then especially on areas that are incredibly relevant to the types of space applications that are being developed, such as telecommunications law, for example. I think what Mujahid mentioned was quite telling with regard to the existence of these regulatory infrastructures sometimes being there, but them being underutilized sometimes because of a lack of appreciation for the value that they can deliver, but then sometimes also purely due to a lack of sophistication in different countries. I know, for example, in Pakistan, the current regulatory infrastructure does not distinguish between an NGSO service provider and a GSO service provider, but at a practical level, the types of monitoring and evaluation, the types of supervision that a space agency or a regulator needs to give to an NGSO operator, particularly one that's serving customers directly, such as Starlink, is very different from the type of supervision or licenses or authorization that a regulator or space agency needs to give to a traditional GSO operator, especially one that's either contributing to a public database or working with institutional clients. So I think helping students and young professionals develop an understanding of this sort will not only lead to a direct growth of the industry in terms of space, satellite, and telecommunications, but also deliver this growth in a much higher quality, at a much higher level, and will also ensure that countries within the continent continue to stay compliant to their international obligations to bodies such as the United Nations Committee on the Peaceful Uses of Outer Space. Uh, as as all space lawyers will know, uh, the the regime for the space environment and the regime for outer space legally is run by this treaty called the Outer Space Treaty of 1967. This treaty is often referred to as the Magna Carta of space law. And it's very important for any spacefaring nation to abide by the basic principles and fundamentals of this treaty. These include things such as space being used for peaceful uses, no appropriation in space, an obligation not to interfere with the space activities of other nations, as well as a need for regulators and governments to authorize and continuously supervise the activities of their private space players. In fact, Ghana itself has participated in various activities of the United Nations Office for Outer Space Affairs, but at the moment, from what I understand it, is not a party to the Outer Space Treaty. I think legal scholarship and understanding, particularly in areas of space law and policy, could help develop a greater understanding of the importance of some of these regulatory structures and how becoming party to these regimes can ensure greater development of these sectors. I think capacity building in space law and policy also has the potential to expand upon the collaborations and partnerships that can be built by a country within the space sector. This is particularly true as space nations tend to partner with other like-minded space nations. A good example of this is the rise of what is recently called the Artemis Accords. This is a group of like-minded states that are looking to commercialize particular parts of space exploration and particularly the moon, and come together based on a joint understanding of how to explore space. A similar group's also been set up by the Chinese government, where other nations, including Pakistan, have joined to further the growth and development of their commercial motivations for outer space. Outer space law is growing in Africa, as is in all parts of the world. At the moment, 19 countries have ratified the Outer Space Treaty, with an additional 10 countries having signed it, but not yet completed the ratification process. And I think as the industry starts to grow, this traction will improve and will also expand. Additionally, as the industry starts to grow with the numbers that I mentioned, and more people start to get employed within the different space economies of the continent of Africa, more and more capacity will certainly be necessary in terms of legal policy and regulatory skills in order to sustain the growth of this space economy and to be able to conduct this growth organically and internally without having to outsource a lot of these very important functions. Finally, capacity building has to go hand in hand with the development of the industry, as if that is not the case, then it often leads to situations of a brain drain, which is not helpful for any country that's looking to grow its economy, particularly in a niche and high-tech sector like the space industry. As such, as the continent continues to keeps prioritizing education, workforce development, it's important that once these people finish their education, they have avenues and opportunities to contribute those educational skills to domestic companies and even government departments so that they can share their expertise to enable growth and development of the continent and the space industry at large. So I think events like this are quite important in bringing this thought leadership together. And I personally partake in a lot of these types of activities when it comes to capacity building, specifically with space agencies. So if anyone has any interest in this area, please feel free to reach out to me over LinkedIn or email or post a question in the Q&A section here. Be very happy to chat with you later on. So thank you very much.
And thank you too. We have a few questions in the chat, but I think I'm going to leave them until the other two speakers have spoken. So our next speaker is Eric. You had a little problem earlier on. Unmute your microphone and please turn on your camera. Let's see if we can get you on stage. Great. Awesome. Eric? We're seeing you, but we're not hearing you. It's over to you now. You are unmuted and your camera is on.
You hear me now?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you.
Hello? Can you hear me?
Yes, are you hearing us? Yes, we are hearing you. Can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you now.
Okay, super.
Thank you
Over
very
to you.
much. And hello to everyone. Okay, it's nice to be with you again and to see you in All Nation University. And I cannot be present, but virtually I'm with you. And the theme of the speaker, the sustainability of the future of satellite, I think there is some way to address this issue. There is the education way, the collaboration way, and the sustainability way of doing or seeing the future of satellite. By education, I mean I'm a member of African Association for Technology and Innovation. And in this role, we and all the members of the association, and thanks to Dr. Mensah and Dr. Yoru, who are with you, we organize education of children in Côte d'Ivoire and in Africa. by STEAM, which is a system of education, interdisciplinary approach that integrates study of science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. And it's a way to show to the young people a path to address the future of satellite. And in this kind of learning, young people can have an idea of the ambition of the African continent for the next generation. And one of the way to address this issue is to think about our nation, especially I will talk about Côte d'Ivoire. Côte d'Ivoire lost half of its forest by the culture of cacao. And as you know, or you may know, Côte d'Ivoire is the first producer of cacao cultures. And with cacao beans, we can do chocolate. And by this culture, we lost half of our forest, nearly half. And is not the only culture with which is the source of this deforestation. But anyway, I can see the future of satellite by the solution to address this kind of problem. And it's not the only problem. We can have we can talk about the problem of ocean. We can talk about the problem of climate change in general. And the satellite can play a key role of a source of solution to find some mitigation of the kind of problem. For example, and I will talk about the collaboration. We need collaboration between entrepreneur, and researcher. For example, in Flexus, which is one of my company, we choose some students every year to work with us in some problem, and we will continue to do that. But in return, we need as an entrepreneur and as a firm to be helped by the nation. And the easy way to help the company is to give them some market to address or to find solution for their own country. And in Côte d'Ivoire, for example, Flexus has the chance to work with the government to address this issue of deforestation. And it can be a good example. For example, if Flexus is a contact for Ghana, to help Ghana and to share experience of Flexus or with students with Ghana to address this kind of issue. And in this way, we can build a market in Africa composed by a researcher, by company, and to find a way to address this global problem by the new application and the new functionality that we can put in a satellite system. And to finish, I will want we talk about the future of satellite, but let me list some solution which come from satellite in the past. There is some technology which are not for Earth, but for satellite. And at the end, this technology are used on Earth. And this is a list: GPS technology, satellite imaging, weather forecasting, telecommunication, water purification system, medical imaging. All this technology come from satellite and are used now on Earth. And I think that the future of satellite will be for space, but a lot of technology will be used on Earth, and we have to find the way to collect this technology and to adapt this technology to be a solution for sustainability in Earth. And it will be my last sentence before the question, but I can send you a link that for people who are a little bit, I will say, comfortable with blockchain system. We use blockchain system and satellite system to address the question of deforestation. I send you a link, and you will see the prototype or the beta version of our platform. And I think this platform can be used by Ghana, because Ghana is one of the leader in cacao cultures. And we can work together if there is some authorities from Ghana, and we can work together on this platform. And it will be my last sentence, and maybe we can talk about later.
Thank you so very much. And thanks for putting that link in the chat. It's available to everybody if you are able to go online and pull it down. And thanks for the practical application, because over the last few days, we have had some abstract concepts and concepts that are specific to those who are technical experts in this space. And we're coming to the point where we're looking at possibilities for students and their professors. And now you've brought it down to the practical application, because just earlier on, Dr. Imam spoke about us doing consultation with those who need the benefits of satellites, and while we're waiting on the money to build all of that, we can do the consultations with the stakeholders. And you have identified some areas which are very practical that can enable those kind of consultations. So thank you very much. And I see where Dr. Kenneth Mubea is on. Dr. Kenneth, we're happy to have you. Dr. Kenneth is the Capacity Development Lead for Digital Earth Africa. Welcome.
Thank you so much. Maybe I could also say Akwabai in Ghana. Chui.
Over to you.
Thank you so much. From Digital Africa, I wanted to just share a small presentation on what the program is and how it connects with the future of satellites. Also opportunity for enabling the various sectors like private sector to come in with high resolution imagery, as I've heard from different partners. So us from Digital South Africa is to congratulate this space Ungana, especially the first one in Kenya, where we were part of, and we had a lot of synergies, especially if you look at the colleague next to me, Yuri. He's been able to work with the Kenya Space Agency on the launching of the rockets, some demos with students. So this is quite an interesting story to report back from Kenya Space Agency. So from the Digital South Africa side, the program was set up 4 years ago, funded by Australian government, and working with different sectors. And all this is to empower governments, academia, and civil society, leaving also not the journalists as well, and working in different sectors to support agriculture, water, land, coastal, and urbanization. The program has been working with partners in the continent, especially I know in Ghana, I have a colleague there, and also working closely in NADMO and very closely with the Ghana statistics to enable the Ghana ecosystems, then working with the partners, different parts of the continent. And the program is hosted by Amazon Web Services. So it's less hassle for governments in terms of access. It's free access, and it's based on open data cube technology. And what has helped the program is the working with different partners in terms of we provide data from free satellites, but then we're able to develop continental services in terms of co-development with different partners. So the key message is that of co-development, and one of them was we developed the water observation from space, from Landsat, and over 35 years of data, you can see how much maybe Lake Volta has changed over time. And we able to do a lot of validation, and also there's already something on scientific to confirm the same. And it's the only service in Africa as well. And also we had something on food security at 10 meters with Sentinel-2, just trying to enable different sectors. Like in Ghana, we are working with Big Data Ghana to do some work. It's a private sector being empowered with a free platform to create business as well as employment, but also to support the youth so that we don't leave them behind. We also have vegetation climatologies, which are very key to empower us on how much climate change has impacted some of our fields, agriculture, other fields, as well as land irrigation. And also just looking at the coastline is one of the services we also co-developed with our partner in Senegal, another one in East Africa. And for example, in Ghana, we've seen a lot of change in the coastal areas, for example, Fueve and other areas like Keta Lagoon. So we're also working with the University of Ghana for training next month in August or September to empower some of their projects. They have an African Union program called Global Monitoring of Environment and Security called GMES, which tries to bring all partners in Africa together. So we have West Africa, we have GMES North Africa, and also we have GMES in the Southern Africa. Trying to connect all these countries, it's quite some task, but possible with these emerging technologies. So on the coastline, we're able to show these variabilities in terms of hotspots, the areas, just showing what we can do with the current satellites. And we also have another conversation with private sectors who can actually bring more close satellites that some governments and other sectors can actually afford. So on the water bodies, we also develop these covering individual water bodies, and this is also based on Landsat. And this is just key messages of giving historical information. And that's our presentation is more of unlocking the patterns of tomorrow from what we've seen in the past. Access to the platform is actually a free access. We have the different opportunities to access the platform. And also we are doing a lot of engagements in terms of user engagement to grow the platform, and also working on the science to provide products that fit for Africa, fit for purpose. Many a days we have brought platforms, but then we have to be, work closely with other institutions in Africa to actually have it owned. So in terms of that context, we are working with different countries to capture some of the stories and how the platform is being used, and also engaging with more platforms and persons who can actually come on board and actually use the platform and also tell their story in their own language and in their own context. Because as we know, there is a lot of diversity in different countries, and some of the governments are there maybe every 5 years or 4 years, and needs and priorities change with time. This is just an example of some work we did in Kenya, working with the Kenya Wildlife Service to rehome some giraffes who were somewhere stuck in the island in Lake Baringo. And this was informed from what we could provide from space. You could see the rising floods around at certain times, and these actually affected the ecosystem, and providing the necessary information for decision making. Just the context of wildlife conservation, very key. Then also working with different partners, like in the southern countries. There's a Okavango Delta, which covers 3 to 4 countries, and looking at the effects of drought, especially in Botswana, where we have Lake Ngami, and we are working with a researcher who was able to be empowered to share some of our work, and some of our work also received attention from journalists who actually came to actually see, is this really true that you could have such a lake just dry up to end, and how the livelihoods affected of the farmers and people around, or even the wildlife. So this is just a way that our satellites to Earth observation can really empower researchers and other persons to tell the story and give them the voice that is possible to actually use the platforms, all the satellites, free and open, just to create a difference for future generation. So this is just an impact of how this particular lake has actually experienced drought over times, and it had some recharge around 2013 when we had floods in certain countries, and just has been continually drying over time. Very key for governments. Then in Zanzibar, we are working in Tanzania in the restoration of mangroves, and we're working with the lecturers and the students. And the students are able to work with the communities in terms of restoration, or even sharing more information in terms of we have amazing data on the coastlines, but how does it really resonate on the ground, and how the people on the ground empowered, and what are their views and opinions of such platforms, and what value can they give in terms of what we provide so that it's fit for purpose. Then just as another example in South Africa, in KwaZulu-Natal, where we normally have floods, and empowering the certain bodies to actually produce a coastal risk and vulnerability map. And our data was actually featured where the scientists actually exploring how much they can use a platform and other sources of data to actually complement the work they do, and closely work with the scientists. Close home in Nigeria, where we have our partner in Ife, Afrigist. It's a center for training which has been there the last 45 years. And we, in terms of the work we did, we had insights on how to showcase how can you actually show impact of floods, especially around a hotspot area like Lukuja. And we just had an example of how we can use some of the data, combine free open data. And actually we use also this data to develop a learning model. So trying to empower persons, and our trainings are in English and French so that we continue to connect everybody. Close home in Ghana, we had a narrative of showing the aspects of land degradation, and we are working closely with the Ghana Statistics Service to actually showcase some of the areas and narratives, because then with the Ghana Statistics, they work within an ecosystem of working with different ministries and departments, which is very key for any work that you bring to a country. Make sure that everyone is included and everyone has a voice and the work that you're doing. Close to the other side of East Africa, we have engagements in Madagascar, and we are working with a professor in the University of Antananarivo, where we are showing some aspects of how that data can be used to actually show the aspects of land degradation from mining activities. And this is just to inform regulation, or to actually inform some of the impacts of the work that is done by different programs, and how they can actually help in restoration. Then our platforms helps also in looking at cooperatively from space. We have different examples. I can name from Sierra Leone, from everywhere, but it's a platform that you're actually empowered to come on board, and also looking at the various tools. You can monitor crop productivity. You can compare also with weather data. You can also compare with other rainfall anomalies, vegetation anomalies, just to make sure you're empowered with the right tools. And where some of the tools are not available, we're actually able to co-develop with different partners in the continent. Then our interest in Africa is the water bodies that we have. So looking at Lake Chad, just covering 5 countries, you've seen the aspect of drought and how that actually affects the livelihoods of people. Then you also have other lakes that you can actually compare, like in East Africa and Southern Africa. So this is just an example of one of the lakes in South Africa. We have Lake Sibaya, and here you can actually see the changes over time. And this was very interesting. When you work with persons, they can actually tell you aspects of government interventions in different areas, and how that plays in educating the citizens of what is happening on the ground. Then also with the platform, the Landsat in analysis ready format, we can actually show the presence of algae bloom, very key for the dams in Southern Africa. It's just an example, empowering the different departments of water. And then also we had something on land degradation, which was very key, because then it has to be a co-development with our partner Sahel and Sahel Observatory in Tunisia. And we were looking at examples of some two hotspot areas like in Burkina Faso and Tunisia. And out of that collaboration, we were able also to develop our learning modules in English and French as part of our free online. So ours is to build the critical mass as much as possible, then also looking at the aspects of diversity and inclusion. We are working with Youth Mappers and Africa Women in GIS, a virtual organization. Once we build this capacity, these are the people that will be able to use your satellites or any other satellites that you co-develop, or even bring insights that can help you calibrate our new satellites for the future of Africa. These are just some of the free models that we have in English and French, and they're available for anyone, and also engagements with you to make sure that we can connect with you via the details that I'll share with you. And also we have weekly live sessions in English and French, just trying to democratize and share what you're doing. And we normally record these and share on YouTube. So longer the days you are looking for resources, they are here with us. And the opportunity here is to work together to unlock the promise of tomorrow together, to make sure we leave no one behind towards the Africa we all want. Thank you for the opportunity.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Dr. Kenneth Mubio. That was a really excellent presentation. Value-added work that is being done to help our planet, especially the African continent. Thanks. Okay, so those are the speakers we have for the panel. We have some questions in the chat, and one of the first questions that came through was, what challenges do you foresee in taking back data ownership given the current ecosystem established on data ownership? I'm not sure which of the panelists would like to take that question. Would you like me to repeat the question? What challenges do you foresee in taking back data ownership given the current ecosystem established on data ownership? So I see you chomping at the bits, Eric, answer that question.
I think Mujahid might be best suited to answer that question on data ownership. But I think the only sort of insight that I might be able to add here is that there's a difference between who owns the data and how it's collected. So I think what you're trying to reference is how can governments license or give permission to satellite operators to be able to collect data from within their jurisdictions, rather than how once collected that data is treated. Because once collected, the data obviously is treated based on the data governance practices of that satellite operator. However, for purposes of collection, many governments often impose restrictions on satellite companies that they must acquire specific types of licenses to get data of a specific quality and of a specific detail. So if, for example, you know, a satellite is capturing images of a certain resolution, then you might need a certain type of license. There are also a lot of parts of a country that are often not allowed to be captured by satellite data. So these normally include defense establishments, safe zones, areas of a country that might be sensitive, for example, are generally not subject to or able to be photographed just like that without seeking specific consent and permission. These are very hard to enforce, though, I must say, but it really is on a government's ability to sort of track and trace how much it's being photographed sometimes, or how much satellite operators are complying, but also to make the regulatory environment and framework friendly so that such data can be collected can also be used and can benefit the people who are being photographed and the land that's being photographed. So I hope that answers part of the question. And I don't know if Mujahid's online and maybe he can add
Thank
more.
you.
But, yeah.
I'm going to ask other members of the panel if they have anything.
Yes, I can
Yes,
give a
I'm
response. I can give a response for Côte d'Ivoire, for example. In Côte d'Ivoire, there is an authority of telecom, and in my case, we address a letter to this authority to do some collect, because there is a policy in Côte d'Ivoire, a policy and a framework to collect data, especially personal data. And it's a good way to contact the authority of your country and to know the law of your country before starting to collect data. And in Côte d'Ivoire, there is a policy and a framework regulated by an authority of telecommunication. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Dr. Kenneth, do you have anything to add to this discussion on data?
I think it's a hot topic, and also with the guidelines from the panelists, it's all about the different engagement with the partners, and also how the countries perceive the open data, and also how much can be shown on these imagery, for example, military installations and all that. And I think 15 years ago, when we started the Google Maps in East Africa, it was quite a task to digitize some of these areas and installations. But over time, the governments have realized it's not so much threat. What is more important is actually empower the ecosystems to thrive. And that's why we have Uber in some of the countries, because then it's an infrastructure that we can actually refer to. And soon, hopefully, we'll have drones manufactured by our own universities to grow these ecosystems. So it's no longer a challenge to high resolution data. It's just a challenge on how to use it effectively to empower our people. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I see we're Moja here.
If I may add. Yes, so let me start from Nigeria. The Space Agency Act of 2010 in Nigeria specifically gives our agency, the Space Agency, function as the repository of satellite data over the Nigerian territory, for instance. So going by that act and then going by the space regulations that we have, any company venturing into the industry or willing to sell or do any space activity that has to do with data must represent the data with our agency. But however, the challenge we have is the open source data. I don't think you can ever take back open source data. It's already out there. If you look at it's part of my analysis and research in my PhD, that open source data is there, and as primitive as it might be sometimes, it just depends on how you want to use it. For instance, Dr. Kenneth talked about, I think, East Africa Uber. That's a good advantage of data. But then coming back to the security challenges that we've been having, we've noticed that these groups were using open source data to actually bring a harm. But I think as time goes by, and then these data are protected by intellectual properties, and then sanctions are brought for whoever opens up the data to whom it shouldn't, I think that should be able to mitigate. However, in my opinion, in my analysis, in my PhD currently that I'm writing, open source data that's there, and most data is already out there, and there's nothing we could do about it. But we could just start mitigating, from now, and that's it. That's my view.
Thank you. The internet is really messed us up, but we have a number of questions from anonymous attendee. And the first one is, as we are defining research pathways, what role do you foresee space lawyers in space ethics, especially when it comes to space data? And I throw this out to all the panelists.
Hamza, that's your question. Unit right.
Look, I think space lawyers, I mean, it's a good question. I think space lawyers have a very important part to play in the growth of the space economy. I think particularly space ethics is quite an interesting question and an area. I think a large number of the principles and best practices that the space industry needs to follow come from the treaties developed by the United Nations Committee on the Peaceful Uses of Outer Space, and more recently, the soft law principles developed by the same committee. These include things like guidelines on space sustainability. These include guidelines on harmful interference, for example, as well as cooperation and collaboration. When it comes to the collection of space data, I completely agree with Mujahid on his assessment that open data exists, but I think increasingly as governments are recognizing how precise and how detailed some of this data can be, they're putting in more and more safeguards in place to protect themselves from the collection of space data in different places, for example. And as more and more rules of the road start to come on board, you need people to enforce those rules. You need people to have capacity and capability to have oversight. And that's where, you know, lawyers and researchers come in. I think space lawyers often have to go a long way to really develop that specialization, to be able to understand that subject matter deeply, to be then able to really positively contribute to the growth or the progression of a particular area of their domestic space ecosystem. And I think data is one of them. So I'm delighted to hear about Mujahid's PhD, and I can't wait to read it. But yeah, maybe he has something to add to this.
Okay. Thank you for that. We have another question, and this is, how do we move from thought leadership to actionable processes and technology advancements? Who would like to take that question? How do you see us moving from thought leadership into actionable processes and technology advancements?
I think I can try from the continental perspective. From the engagements with Digital South Africa is that the engagements with different champions in these countries is what is helping us. For example, the African Union Commission or the Africa Space Agency, the president is actually an Ivorian from Ivory Coast. So he's actually bringing in the, that aspect of the technology, connecting us with the European Commission and et cetera, et cetera. So in these countries, we are building champions, like the example from, the different sectors, these that champion from this country at the high level. So these are the ones who are really resonating. And also looking at my colleague, Eric, I think he has a very good moment in Cote d'Ivoire, for example.
Okay, thank you very much. And I think this is question is directed to Dr. Kenneth. It's on the concept of deforestation and space. Who are the players supporting this challenge?
This is a very hot question because some of the activities that you've mentioned here are done by the communities or actually done by people you might know. The government is just on the regulation. So it's more to empower citizen-generated science to help in that aspect so that we work as a team, both government and the citizens, to restore some of the forests. For example, the one in Ghana was quite topic because then we know what is happening in different areas. And other countries, we know some of our friends are living in the forest. So as you can see, different governments come in, and also they're using a different narrative when they are, they're saying they are pro-climate, but when they join the government, then they realize there are other stakeholders, and you cannot just go just removing people from forest who've actually coexisted. So it's more of looking at the issue case by case, and different countries at different levels. Thank you.
In the case of deforestation, there is in Côte d'Ivoire a different law of deforestation, and now the issue for some of country like Ghana, Côte d'Ivoire, is the access of the European Union market, because there is new law in European Union market and the law mentioned that you cannot sell product which is a part of responsible of deforestation, and is new, and it will be applicable in 2025. And for this reason, the government is the key player of the deforestation of supervision in Côte d'Ivoire.
Thank you, Eric. Dr. Kenneth Mobia, can you speak now?
Yes,
Are
I
you-
was able to speak, and I was able to respond.
Okay. So can you go ahead now? Because we are hearing you.
Yes. So similar response with Eric. I mentioned the different governments have different priorities, and also they have to carefully look at the engagement with the citizens in the areas where we have deforestation to actually understand the actual activities, and also educating them that of conservation and how much we can do some of the restoration. Like from our platforms, you can see areas which have changed and how much has changed from Earth observation, for example, and how much effort is required. So some countries, we can see they already have initiatives like Ethiopia to plant 1 billion trees by the next 10 years. So it's more of citizen engagement, and also the opportunity to use the Earth observation technology to make sure we're empowered. Thank you.
Thank you. And for the final question, for in-country researchers, how should we collaborate on solutions in a sustainable way that empowers African ownership? That's an open question to all the panelists.
Since I could have the microphone, is to talk about the co-development of the solutions that we have, that it's done selectively with our people, indigenous people, as well in these parts of the continent, as well as different areas. And the key message is also to include the youth very much. So as I talked about the youth mappers, the youth, the young people in the astrophysics and different areas, to make sure they can develop their own local solutions, like we've seen what China has done, to bring it to Africa. Thank you.
Yeah,
Okay, great.
if I could quickly add to that, I would really encourage engaging with student and young professional organizations like the Space Generation Advisory Council, or SGAC, for example, which has an extensive membership all across the African continent, and organizes events and activities that actively bring together different groups of students and young professionals to work on and develop and launch space programs, including offering scholarships, funding, project groups, grants, etc. So look for opportunities like that where you can find avenues to collaborate, and that's how you build long-term sustainable partnerships. I think it's a good starting point. Yeah.
Thank you. Eric, did I see you raise your hand? Yes, please go ahead. We're not hearing you, Eric. We are not hearing you. We are not hearing you. I know you're speaking, but we're not hearing.
It's my fault. The phone is
Yes,
mute.
we're hearing now.
Okay, thank you. I can mention on my side that there is an initiative which name is African Constellation Satellite Project. And we start this project with All Nation University. And I think it can be a good starting point to reactivate this project and to accelerate this project. And Dr. Mensah is on the place, and it can be a good entry point to talk about this in Ghana, in real. And the project's name is AFCOM. AFCOM SAT. African Constellation Satellite Project.
Yeah. Okay, thank you so much.
And is led by RTE, which is the African Association for Technology and Innovation. And we work with different countries in Africa.
Okay, thank you very much, Eric.
Thank you. And you are all welcome.
Oh, thank you. We have Dr. Easton Reed from the U.S. Embassy of Ghana who would like to ask a question.
So this is part comment and part question. Engineers often like technical solutions, but all the solutions may not be technical. And if I were to use systems thinking, the systems thinking is not just within electrons and satellites and forces, but may also include low-tech things like people and communities. And so they are intractable, seemingly intractable problems like deforestation and illegal mining, especially here in Ghana, where it seems the more data you collect, the more deforestation there is, and the more illegal mining there is. So data by itself isn't a complete solution. Something that we found to be effective is to be working with community areas and traditional leaders in CRAMAs, community resource management areas, where these individuals know their communities, and if some new entity is coming in and starts logging or starts mining, they have their eyes on the ground and can alert authorities and can supplement maybe some weak infrastructure or weak security or law enforcement officials. So to what degree have you found that you've been able to connect your high-tech solutions with existing solutions that have been successful? So you're not reinventing the wheel, but supplementing or creating synergies with existing interventions.
I think I can answer the US Embassy. Is that also part of a USAID solution for Ghana in the previous work? Sorry, just being very diplomatic, is that I was working with the Surveyor program, USAID and NASA program. And as part of that initiative, System Thinking, with the University of Ghana, we had a program called Mapping Charcoal Production and Protection, so that now we do sustainable energy nexus. So you're looking at the demand and supply, and also you engaging the community in terms of designing the service. So we're using a high resolution imagery and maybe solutions on NASA, just Earth observation stuff to show what has changed over time, but also close engagement on the needs assessment of these different communities, and bringing the aspect of close engagements and bringing also other stakeholders, like we could have the World Agroforestry Center to show them what happens when you degrade our soils, and also more closely also working with ICRISAT to show them that at least we can have these types of crops varieties, so that when we cut some of the forest, we are also replanting with more drought resistant crops and etc. So that's more systems, the people are empowered, and also the government is empowered in terms of decision making. That one was closely with the Ministry of Lands versus Ministry of Agriculture, because it's that nexus. We're also working closely with the Environmental Protection Agency because of bringing that awareness as well. And finally, bringing in the youth and the young people, such as the Youth Mappers itself, is funded by USAID. So this is quite a structure where US is leading in many parts of the world. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Kenneth, we have one more question before we close off this session, and it is from Dr. Edu of Côte d'Ivoire.
Security is a very hot topic in satellite operation. If a hijacker hijack a satellite, it could be disastrous to a country, especially in time of war. So I want to ask a question about how can we use blockchain to assure satellite security? Thank you.
Interesting question. Who will take that one? Dr. Hamza Hamid?
No, I'm happy to come in. I think I can certainly share a few presentations that I've given in the recent past on the importance of cybersecurity within satellite infrastructure and the impact that could have on terrestrial connectivity. I haven't not looked at it from a war perspective, but I think the principle is the same. I think the key to enhancing cybersecurity within any infrastructure design is really to follow certain NIST. So the NIST, which is the it's an American cybersecurity standardization organization, and NIST has developed several policy papers on 3 different areas. So there's a policy paper on how the NIST cybersecurity framework can apply to that communication channel between a satellite and its ground station. There's another policy paper on how the NIST cybersecurity framework can be applied to satellite design and build, as well as another policy paper that looks at how consumers utilize satellite data. So once it's transmitted and then transported to the various consumers out there. And if you apply robust enough cybersecurity standards across your space infrastructure, both on the terrestrial and the spatial side, then you can do everything you can, at least in your power, to protect from a cyber attack. I'm not at the moment aware of the specific benefits of blockchain when it comes to preventing a cyber attack onto a satellite, but happy to explore that more if you have an interesting application. I hope that helps. Thanks.
Thank you. And I see Dr. Imam has his hand up.
Thank you. Yes, if I make a comment on this, because I have been involved in this activity when I was at Astrum, which is now Airbus, developing satellites for the commercial sector in the traditional sense, such as Inmarsat 4, Skynet, and so on. So these, even in sort of the late 90s, when I was involved in these projects, they all incorporated some sort of encryption and cybersecurity essential for the operation of the satellite. Of course, there's also the other element is for protecting your data as well. So there's a platform operating the satellite is one thing, but also protecting your data, whether it's remote sensing data or communication information and so on. So, but even the navigation system, they've got some sort of sense of security system involved in the very high definition positioning operations. Going to blockchain, I mean, blockchain itself, we're not talking about Bitcoin, but we're talking about the randomization of the code that it can generate, which is used as a key for ciphering and deciphering the algorithms for the encryption decryption. And also now, of course, there is the new domain of quantum crypto, which we are also looking at many companies trying to demonstrate in orbit. So it is essential to do that. Crypto already used, encryption, sorry, is already used on the ground. So of course it's essential. But what is missing at the moment is that the smaller satellites, especially if they're developed by universities or research organizations, they somehow miss this item, and they don't think about, oh, we need to protect our CubeSat. And I think we need to start even at the CubeSat level, even at the smallest satellites, even research and development, to make sure they're encrypted. The commanding of that is encrypted and the data from it is encrypted, so that it will not be maliciously used.
Thank you. Quite enlightening. And I see, Eric, you have your hand up. We can take one last question, because this session should have closed out at 12, but that's okay. We allow some flexibility. Go ahead, Eric.
Okay, so to respond to my response to the question concerning the blockchain technology is there is different part of this technology. If you go to the link I sent in the chat, you will see that we already use blockchain, and we'll use blockchain in 3 ways, because someone talk about Bitcoin and another blockchain, but the 3 way we use blockchain is for encryption and decryption, is for secure the data. It's one way, because all the information and the data are encrypted in this technology. The second way is decentralization. It means that you maybe you have your data for your use, but if you want to share your data with someone, I want to be sure that I'm not, one thing I can say, it's vendor lock. It means that if you have a problem, I cannot use my data for my own purpose. And this is an issue. So blockchain technology offers this aspect of this technology is decentralization of the data. And the last way we use the blockchain in the platform is for, I will say, in incitative way. It's for encourage people to use our platform, because when you send informative data, you can be rewarded by the certain aspect of your data. Example, if I'm in Côte d'Ivoire, and if you are in Ghana, in Egypt, or in Kenya, and you have a satellite which is on my zone, if you provide me data that I can use on my system, I can reward you by some aspect of the blockchain. It can be by token, it can be by crypto asset, it can be by digital asset, and you can use this asset to do something or use some of my services. And with the link I provide, you can, for example, use the blockchain, and if you use the platform, you can reward by a token called Made in My Nation token. And if you are, I think with the person we have on this chat, and after this meeting, we can work around this framework. This protocol is by reward every actor of the system. If I'm in Côte d'Ivoire and you can provide me some data that I can use on my system, I can reward you by something toward the blockchain. And this is the last aspect of this technology. And go to and try to play with that platform, and we can talk together, and we can have some exchange. And I think the best way to use it is to use the technology between Côte d'Ivoire and Ghana. They have a use case to address certain issue concerning the cacao cultures.
Thank you. We have had a
example.
really rich discussion this morning. And what came to mind is that we really should be offering our attendants a certificate in Space Futures for attending 3 days of this really intense knowledge. This is not just a regular, it's actually like a training program if you think about it. I'm like, why didn't I think of that before today? Right? So we're gonna have to give you all certificates of now being, certified or certified attendance and Space Futures for thinking about the future of space. Thank you to our panelists. Thank you, Dr. Kenneth Mobile. Thank you to Eric Ngesan. Thank you, Hamza Hamid. And yes, Hamza, we did actually post your correct title on the flyer that we did fix it and send it out online, but unfortunately we printed the old version, so we have to correct ourselves next time. We have to also update the print version. And then thank you, Mujahid Indabawa from Nigeria. Could you give them a round of applause? You have been a really rich learning opportunity, and we look forward to continue our dialogue. So we're going to take a quick break now. Later on in the armchair chat, we are going to be joined by somebody from NASA. And he's not on it yet. I think he's supposed to be on at 12:30. So we'll see if he's able to make it. So thank you. Take a quick break.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Gracias.
This is Justin. I'm doing a sound check.
Justin, I
Are
don't know
you
what's
able to hear me?
happening. As you said, you can hear me on audio. Are you able to speak?
Yes, you're not able to. Can you confirm if you're able to hear me?
You're lying, but I'm not hearing in here. So guys, we're not hearing in the room. Tech. We're not hearing in the room. Nobody in the room is hearing anything. The people online saying they can hear. He's hearing me, but we're not hearing him. And the people online are saying they can hear him. Could you hold on a minute, please? We're trying to make sure the people in the room can hear. Sorry.
Yes.
This is one of the space agenda.
It's like
Yeah, but we can't hear him.
This is
It's you
Justin
guys.
testing the audio.
All right, there we go. Thank you. See, it's not them, it's us. All right, here we go.
all right.
So thank you. We are going to restart. So we're talking to Justin from NASA, who's with the International Office, and he's going to be talking a little bit about what NASA's program in Africa is, both on the sustainability side, which we talked about yesterday, but what we talked about today, the satellite side. So please take it away, Justin.
Thank you so much for the kind introduction. Just confirming that you're able to hear me now.
Yes, we're hearing you.
Wonderful. Well, I offer my greetings from Washington, D.C. at NASA headquarters. I am a bit jealous. I've been listening to some of the conversation and learning from the ideas there. I wish I was with you there in person, but I extend greetings from all of my colleagues at NASA. I would start with just maybe a statement about what NASA is up to these days. We are pursuing a program of scientific discovery and exploration. We have a human spaceflight program. We have astronauts aboard the space station. We are working to return humans to the moon and get them on to Mars. We have a broad program of science and exploration. We have a series of satellites that are in orbit, a series of rovers and landers in our solar system, and a series of satellites that are looking out into the universe, as well as satellites that are looking down at the Earth. More than 20 satellites that we're operating, studying the Earth from a climate perspective and understanding the Earth as a living, breathing system. We also pursue a program of aeronautics research, working in areas such as reducing aviation noise and green aviation and sustainable aviation fuels, for example. I've heard through the conversation so far in the conference mention of a couple of NASA's programs that we're very proud to partner there in Africa, and I'm happy to discuss in more detail some of those partnerships, if that would be of interest. I'll pause there for any additional questions.
All right, if somebody has a mic. So do you have any specific questions about things you might want to be doing with NASA that you would like to begin a conversation? So there's one mic over here, and then we'll start. So we're going to be hearing from
Thank you
Doctor.
very much.
Please
Dr.
introduce yourself.
Yes,
Thank you.
I'm Dr. Kobina Fuswamankwa, a meteorologist and a climate scientist with specialty in aerosol remote sensing. I've been joining a lot of NASA training programs online. That is NASA F Data, Webinars, Digest, Asset, Haycast, Lack Power. Even I was part of the Tempo stuff they were doing. I think they did some training before the launching. Now, as somebody in an area whereby we lack ground data, during your validation processes, is it possible that you can include some of us in your validation process in order to beef up with how the algorithms for the retrieval works? Because some of the works I've done, I've realized that especially along the southern West Africa, the satellites are not doing very well because of the cloud coverage. And as such, when we use satellite data for our studies, the correlations are not very good and application is limited. Thank you.
Oh, thank you for your question and the work that you're doing.
Justin, did you hear the question?
I did, thank you. Yes, and I really appreciate the work that the gentleman is doing there. It's so critical, and it touches on a challenge that we're working to address, and we're looking for partnership to help us address the challenge. I mentioned NASA's currently operating more than 20 satellites that are gathering terabytes of scientific data about the Earth. And a challenge we have is making that data available to decision makers, policy makers, researchers around the world. One program that I might mention that may be well known already is the SERVIR program, SERVIR. Together with our other partners in the United States government, we have an organization there in West Africa that is working to apply and train researchers and practitioners in making that data more applicable to local challenges. We have over 600 institutions that we're partnering with in different regions, including there in West Africa. We've trained over 10,000 local officials and researchers. There in West Africa, we have focused on the application of NASA science satellite data in areas that include agriculture and food security, water resources, weather and climate, and land cover land use. So I would encourage interest in applying NASA satellite data, training, if there's interest in training on how to access and use the data, I suggest looking into NASA's SERVIR program, or I should say our partnership SERVIR program.
All right, thank you. Dr. Mensah, you have the floor.
Yes, okay. I'm Dr. Mensah. I am the president of the African Association for Technology. My association is participating in the NASA High Altitude Balloon to be launched next month. I think it's in Texas. So this is the first time we send an instrument on board of, I think it's a CubeSat, a MICE IQ, and that will collect data, and the data will be returned, the instrument will be returned to us, and then we will analyze the data. So we are looking forward to have more projects in the future with NASA. Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, I'm so happy.
Any other comments, questions?
May I just quickly address that comment, if that's okay? I would.
That's okay.
Well, thank you so much for partnering with us on the high altitude balloons. For others who might be interested, in addition to NASA's satellites, we operate a series of high altitude balloons, both primarily in the United States, but also in other countries. They tend to operate from about 24,000 meters and higher. And as the gentleman mentioned, we will use them to either test scientific instruments before we fly them on a satellite, or we will gather data that will augment our satellite instrumentation. So this is, I believe, a real opportunity. There is a discussion planned, as I understand, at the upcoming International Astronomical Union meeting, I believe, here in early August. I believe there's a session planned that will discuss high altitude astrophysics research with opportunities for participation there in Africa. So if there's interest in that, take a look at the IAU conference there in early August. really happy to have this partnership.
Okay. Awesome. Thank you. We have another question.
Hi. Okay. Hi, my name is Pierre Yurugo from Côte d'Ivoire, and I am affiliated with National Polytechnic Institute, which is a top engineering school in our country. We are about to start a program, undergraduate program in aeronautic and space engineering program. And I know that NASA has some educational program. Is there any program that you may recommend as experiential program for a student of undergrad student from Africa?
I'm really glad that you mentioned that. That is a high priority for NASA, is what we call inspiring and preparing the next generation of explorers. And here in the United States, we have a challenge of keeping younger students interested, involved, in continuing their education in STEM areas. We have amongst the programs that NASA pursues to inspire the next generation, we have a program called GLOBE, GLOBE, and it is an international program sponsored by NASA and our other U.S. government partners. We have about 140 partner countries around the world, including 27 nations in Africa. The focus of the program is higher secondary school, so students who may be 15, 16, 17 years old. It includes training and webinars for teachers to learn about the scientific process. In particular, it helps train teachers and students how to gather in situ environmental data. And then NASA provides training and webinars on the calibration of that local data using our satellite data. It goes into a global, available to all the participants around the world. There are more than 1,000 schools. That it is a full tool for inspiring the young people to scientific careers. And it also provides a connectivity between the world. It's a forum for them to engage in scientific discussions and also address local challenges. So this is called the GLOBE program, and I encourage teachers and students who might be interested to take a look at our website and consider participation.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Any of the students have any questions or comments? He's been talking a lot about what he does with students. Any of you students have any questions, comments? You're running a satellite program here, so. Nothing?
Can I just add,
question?
Add one comment?
Another question. Another question.
Hello?
I just talk about the dynamics of data retrievers right now from the sets. The data sets which were formerly free are now being more or less sold or being paid for. So in a place like Africa, whereby accessing data by paying is challenging, is there any other way that we can get free access to such data sets?
Thank you for the question. I believe the question was in reference to paying. I believe the question was about NASA data access. Is that right?
Yes, she's asking if the NASA data access can be made freely available. Are you paying for it now?
Now, some are now that is that. So you need to register with sometime Amazon to be able to retrieve the data set. So when you want to use the APIs, if you cannot pay, you cannot use the API.
But who are you paying? Is it NASA or some other third party?
It's a third party.
Okay.
Yeah. So
Are those third party?
this is,
I guess the question, Justin, is the third party on contract to NASA, or they are just inserting themselves in the process and providing a service? If that's the case, you need to get to the raw data and do the service yourself. So I guess the question is, if in case that some companies are putting in place, let's say, a bridge and providing, let's say, scrubbed data and making it available for pay, can African universities get to the raw data as opposed to having to pay for scrub data? That's what it would be. I know that they're not charging for data, so maybe a company is doing it and then making it, scrubbing it and then providing it as a service. So what is the rules on African universities getting access to the raw data, and then they themselves can scrub it and create their own, I guess, model for using it? I think that's the question he's asking.
yeah, thank you so much. That is a real challenge. So first, NASA is very proud that we follow an open science data policy. All NASA data, scientific data that we acquire from our systems is free and publicly available. However, we well recognize that the challenge is getting to the researchers, to the policymakers. We have terabytes of data that we're receiving, and it's not always easily accessible in a usable format. So that's a challenge that we are constantly working to improve. There are programs that we provide training for accessing and using NASA data. Some of the programs that might be of more local interest. I mentioned, for example, the Severe program there in West Africa is one specific way that we have tried to tackle the challenge of making that data more accessible. We necessarily have to focus on a couple of high priority research areas that I mentioned previously. But as a general principle, all data from NASA is publicly and freely available.
Okay, so I guess what we're hearing then, we have some homework to do on our side in terms of African universities, African governments, African institutions, and maybe this is something that maybe even if there's a regional ECOWAS entity can get a sense of the things that you need in common that are, let's say, very challenging to get to, as opposed to one university start to try to crunch through that data. You form a working group and divide it up so you can take the raw data and make it accessible in a format that your government and the university needed, whether it's for climate or desertification, water, or whatever it is that you rainfall, whatever it is you need it for. All right, this is moving along. This is good. Any other questions that are relevant for NASA? No, you good?
Can I just say one thing?
Yes, please go ahead.
So yeah, I first thank you very much, Justin, for this very interesting talk. So I also wanted to really thank NASA and people like Barry Leffer and Ali Omar for supporting the miasma effort in looking at a tempo-like instrument to cover Africa and the Middle East. So this is really greatly appreciated. But I'm really happy to hear that also participants here in this conference have been involved in the tempo data processing, and more importantly, the question about validation. This is something that we're trying to push in the region. So any support from NASA on that would be really greatly appreciated. So I look forward to maybe reaching out again to find out how we can collaborate on that. And also anybody in the forum who is working on things like tempo data or validation, I'll be really grateful if they can contact me and then they could join the working group for the miasma project. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. So thank you so much, Justin. I have one question. So I know the Lunar Surface Innovation Consortium has an international, let's say, well, at the meetings I've been to at Johns Hopkins APL lab, they do have people from around the world. Are those only open to countries that already have signed the Artemis Accords? Do you know?
Well, yeah, thank you. So as I heard the question, you mentioned a lunar surface consortium at Johns Hopkins University.
Yeah.
Is that right? Okay. And
It's the
the
Lunar
Artemis
Surface
Accords.
Innovation Consortium. Yes, the Lunar Surface Innovation Consortium is run out of Johns Hopkins APL lab, and they do have working groups online, and they have 2 meetings a year. And I've seen there's some international people at certain one in Washington, D.C., in the Maryland area, the spring meeting. My question is, do you know if that consortium is only open to countries that have signed the Artemis Accord? Is that, in other words, to participate in that those working groups, does your university have to be in a country that already has signed the Artemis Accords?
That's a great question. The short answer is no. So maybe just one word on the Artemis Accords for background. But the short answer is no. A country or a university it's not necessary that they're a member of the Artemis Accords in order to participate in NASA's lunar surface programs. So the Artemis Accords, 43 nations have signed up to that description or series of principles for sustainable exploration of the solar system. That includes several countries in Africa that have joined the Artemis Accords program. It is, I believe, a very helpful grouping of like-minded nations that are focused on how best to manage human exploration and scientific discovery, but it is not a requirement to be a member nation in order to partner with NASA.
Oh, thank you. We like to hear that. Many African universities believe that their experience in driving over very bad roads and mining prepare them to be part of the transportation solution problem for lunar surface innovation. So now that they know that they're not precluded, you might see a couple universities trying to come up with, technology, low cost technology for doing some of those things.
This is how we come to the best solutions of our problems. Yes.
Definitely. Thank you so much, Justin. No more questions from our side. Thank you. taking time. And for those of you who are listening online, we're good 1:40. Thank you. Bye-bye. Right, so we'll take a break and come back
Thank
around
you so much.
1:40. Thank